Okay, Barry, just give me a second, but I think I'm on to something here. All right, that's Trojan War, it's Troy. Aha! Right here. Yeah, okay. So, that means yes, okay, good. It's all lining up. Just one more thing. Come on. Yeah, okay, cool. Oda, you are a clever one for sure. You think you got one over on me, but I think I cracked your little code. Get this, Barry, okay? You know Pluton, right? The ancient weapon that can apparently annihilate an island in one shot. That was the one that Crocodile was looking for at Alabasta, right? Okay. Well, I have discovered that Pluton may in fact be a reference to the Roman god Pluto, who is the lord of the Underworld. So right away, you didn't think I was gonna get that far, did you? But no, wait, it gets better. It turns out, according to this astrology book, that Pluto is also the name of a planet. Up until 2006. Now it's a dwarf planet, but it's a celestial body, right? So everything's starting to really click together. And you want to know something that's really wild? The other two ancient weapons, Uranus and Poseidon, are also named after celestial bodies. Uranus being the planet Uranus, and then Poseidon being the Greek equivalent for Neptune, which I may remind you is an actual planet. It's blue. That's how you know it's a planet, right? Okay. So that means that the world government in One Piece is attempting to create some kind of giant rope or chain or pulley system. I don't exactly know the mechanics behind this. I'm not a physicist. But they're attempting to make some kind of giant object to snare these planets and literally crash them down on the One Piece world. Bam! Solved it. That was what, like a 20-long-year plus mystery? Solved right here. Okay, so hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking and Barry. I guess there's really no point for me to continue this video since I already solved the mystery of what the ancient weapons are. They're like the literal planets, you know? That's not going to be the case, but if it actually did happen that way, if there were like, you know, there's a Pluto in the One Piece world, there's a Neptune and a Uranus in the One Piece world, right? And it's like, oh no, yeah, the ancient weapons are quite literally just taking those planets and crashing them into the One Piece world. I mean, I'd be sitting here like, well, called it, I guess, but also like, wow, that was kind of on the nose there, but hey, that does count as an ancient weapon, right? So yes, today we are going to be talking about the ancient weapons of the One Piece world, not because we found any new information out about them or anything. They have been mentioned a few times during Wano, most notably during Oden's flashback when he was writing in his logbook near the end, you know, right before he talked about Roger arriving at Laugh Tale, naming it Laugh Tale, and he laughed and all that. He talked about, you know, what are the ancient weapons? What is the Will of D? You know, we found out the answers to this and so much more, and I'm going to write it all down in my logbook for anybody to find and read. You know, here's all the ancient weapons, here's where to find them, here's what they do, and here are the launch codes to Pluton. Hope nobody evil finds this book, you know? I doubt that Oden would have done that, but if he did, I guess Momo now knows, and Yamato now knows, and anybody that reads the book, right? But I doubt he was, like, super specific, especially if they arrived at Laugh Tale and they found out how important this was. Oden might have been like, alright, I probably shouldn't just copy this down in a book that can just be found by anybody, right? Because this information could be very, very dangerous on how to find an ancient weapon, right? The last time in One Piece that we got any big information involving the ancient weapons is still at Fishman Island, when we discovered Shirahoshi is an ancient weapon. She is Poseidon, who has the ability to summon Sea Kings, which under the, you know, the wrong command could destroy the entire world, because they're basically giant sea leviathans that are like covering the entire planet. Most of the One Piece world is sea after all. Now, she doesn't have complete control over this. In fact, she's only able to summon the Sea Kings under moments of extreme duress. Like, I don't think Shirahoshi, even if she like consciously decided like, I want to summon an army of Sea Kings, I feel like she couldn't do that just whenever she wanted. She has to like train with the ability first. I feel like she just can't go out in the ocean and be like, army of Sea Kings, you know, Sea King Avengers, I assemble you. You know, it's like there's an Iron Man Sea King, there's a Thor Sea King, and they just all assemble right around her. I don't think that's how it works. I think she has to train with it a bit. She's still able to, like, understand the Sea Kings, which not even other fishmen and merfolk can do that. That's something specific just to Poseidon. She can still hear their voices, but they are also very intelligent creatures, and so that's, like, the whole thing is kind of like, there's a time for when this is necessary, necessary a time for when all the Sea Kings need to be assembled together, and they're going to need Poseidon for that. But, you know, so Shirahoshi, I don't think the time has come really for that yet. And so that was also the arc when Robin was talking to Neptune, and she mentioned the names of all three of them. And so since then, we haven't gotten anything huge, but at Reverie, something very interesting happened. At Reverie, you had the moment with Im-sama in that room of flowers staring at a picture of Shirahoshi, to which Im stabbed a knife through it, okay? And then there was another picture of Vivi that Im was just looking at and then just kind of walked away, and Im does not speak, so we do not know what's up with that. There was also Luffy and Blackbeard's wanted posters that Im had, like, shredded and cut up into, like, a bunch of different pieces. So, shredded Luffy and Blackbeard's wanted posters, both members of the D-Clan, stabbed a knife through Shirahoshi's, kind of like, you know, we either have her or we're going to eliminate her or something, and then just kind of stared at Vivi's picture and then just walked away. And then after the Reverie, we know Shirahoshi managed to make it back down to the Ryugu Kingdom at Fishman Island, but Vivi has gone missing. This is interesting. And then there's also the stuff with Sabo apparently dead as well. So there's a theory that's been around for a while, pretty much ever since Fishman Island, and the theory goes, well, since Shirahoshi is a person, you know, a living being that has the ability of the ancient weapon inside of her, maybe all of the ancient weapons are like that. Maybe there's an avatar of Pluton, an avatar of Uranos, somewhere out there in the world, right? They're all living beings, okay? Now, this theory has gotten more traction because of what happened at Reverie. It would make sense, you know, we obviously know Shirahoshi's Poseidon, which would make sense why Im would stab a picture of her, like we need to eliminate the mermaid princess because she's an ancient weapon. She could end the world, right? Shirahoshi, of course, wouldn't do that willingly, but, you know, just the fear of it, it would scare the ever-loving crap out of the world government, right? And so the reason Vivi went missing, perhaps, is because, well, we know that Crocodile was looking for Pluton at Alabasta, Vivi's from Alabasta, and just like Shirahoshi is the princess of the Ryugu Kingdom and she's an ancient weapon, Vivi being the princess of the Nefeltari family at Alabasta, the idea goes perhaps Vivi is Pluton, alright? Now, there's a few things with this that cause some issues, most notably being that it was mentioned many times in the story Pluton was a battleship. That's what Crocodile called it, you know, it's a battleship that can annihilate an entire island with one shot. Love that quote. But anyway, that statement that Crocodile said was given some credibility once we got to Water 7, okay? And we got introduced to the Cypher Pole, CP9. They were undercover there for 4 years looking for the blueprints of Pluton because it was stated that Pluton, this ultimate mega battleship, was constructed in Water 7, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago during the Void Century, right? So Cypher Pole goes in undercover. They try to get it from Iceberg. Iceberg had the fake blueprints. He gave the real blueprints to Frankie. Frankie reveals the true Pluton blueprints at the Tower of Law, and he burns them. But before he burns them, he lifts up a few pages and he shows Kaku and Lucci, who, you know, they were Cypher Pole agents, but they also worked as top-of-the-line shipwrights at Water 7 for years. So Frankie, just to kind of prove that these are the legitimate blueprints of Pluton, was like, hey, Kaku, Lucci, you guys know what these are. These aren't fakes. I'm going to give you, like, here's 2 or 3 pages of Pluton, and Kaku and Lucci kind of looked at them like, oh shit, those things are legit. Those are the real blueprints to Pluton, and then Frankie burned them, okay? So that was given some credibility right there, okay? At one point, Pluton, during the Void Century, was an actual battleship with blueprints that was constructed at Water 7, alright? And the way that Kaku and Lucci responded, we don't actually get to see the blueprints ourselves, other than the cover. We don't actually get to see what they look like. But the way Kaku and Lucci responded, it seemed to just be like, okay, those look like actual blueprints for a ship that we're used to, okay? It didn't seem to be like something else, like, I don't know, like, we're going Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood! Like, here are the blueprints on how to make a homunculi that are actually the true Pluton. Now, it didn't seem to be anything weird like that. It seemed like they were recognizing the blueprints as being actual blueprints for a ship that was built at Water 7. So at least at one point, that's what Pluton was, okay? So, that kind of pokes a hole in the whole Avatar theory, you know? It's like, okay, it was a warship, so we know that's a warship. We have no idea what the hell Uranos is, but we know that Shirahoshi is Poseidon, okay? So, here's an idea. I'm going to throw this out here. Let's start with this, and then we're going to get into some mythology later, okay? So, who built the ancient weapons? They were built during the Void Century, which basically means you got two different factions that could have constructed the damn things, okay? You got the Ancient Kingdom that Clover talked about, which was apparently the kingdom that ruled the world before the world government, although we're not 100% sure on that. We know it was an ancient kingdom. During the Void Century, it was very, very powerful. It might have had an empire that spanned the entire globe, okay? And then the other side of it was the world government that fought against the Ancient Kingdom. The world government eventually won and became what it is now today through the 20 kings and the families, and then, you know, those are the descendants of the celestial dragons, right? Okay. So, the Joy Boy is also involved in there too, but I like to think Joy Boy was part of the faction of the Ancient Kingdom. Maybe not a main faction, maybe Joy Boy split off from the Ancient Kingdom and founded the Clan of D, but that's where, you know, Joy Boy originates from, is the Ancient Kingdom, okay? So you can either say, you could look at this from a bunch of different angles, really. You could say the Ancient Kingdom built the ancient weapons in order to fight against the world government, because maybe they were technologically advanced, so they built these 3 great weapons in order to fight against the world government because they were trying to take away their kingdom. Or you could say that the Ancient Kingdom built the weapons before the world government even, you know, became a problem, not as weapons of mass destruction, but as, you know, something like a protection for their own kingdom. You know, kind of think like, you ever see Atlantis, the Lost Empire, how they had those giant statues surrounding the city that, like, protected them? Kind of think of something like that, you know, or you ever watch Adventure Time when they go to the island, you know, the human island, and then they have the guardians there, you know? Think of it as something like that. Like the Ancient Kingdom was maybe really technologically advanced, and they were like, we need to have some kind of, some kind of, you know, protectors or guardians, and so they created Pluton and Uranus and Poseidon as the guardians, not to be used to take over the world or fight against a threat, but just to have just in case. You know what I mean? Maybe against some sort of cataclysm, like if a meteor was about to hit the Earth, maybe the ancient weapons could be activated and protect the planet. It wasn't meant to be used against other human beings and other, you know, like species that lived on the planet, right? Okay, maybe that was an idea. Or, flip side of that coin, you could say the world government created the ancient weapons. Now, you might say, it was like, well, the ancient weapons, you know, the world government's looking for them right now, right? Well, it would make a lot of sense that if the world government made these things 900 years ago or 800 something years ago and they lost them, then they would be very, very inclined to get their hands back on them again, right? They'd be like, hey, we created these things. We know how devastating they are. If we get our hands on them again, we lost them. You know, Joy Boy did something and took them away from us, but if we could take them back, then we could truly rule the world, and nobody, you know, Yonko, revolutionary, supernovas, nothing could stop us if we got this power back again. Think of it the same way as the dragons, where there used to be legitimate dragons flying around the One Piece world, and they were probably connected to the celestial dragons because they're called the celestial dragons. And then at some point the dragons all died off or something happened to them. Maybe that's what happened at God Valley, and there's no more dragons anymore. And because there's no more dragons, that weakens the Tenryubito's overall power, you know, their restraint on the world, right? So they lost their dragons, and maybe they lost the ancient weapons too. And they're like, the world government is still very, very powerful, but they're not as powerful as they were during their heyday, when they maybe had all 3 ancient weapons for them, and they also had these, like, a legion of army of dragons. Considering Uranus is the god of the sky in Greek mythology, maybe the dragons were Uranus in a sense, but we'll get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So the idea is, okay, that those are a bunch of different possibilities, right? It could have been any one of those things, right? There's also a possibility the Ancient Kingdom could have been the evil ones, right? The world government maybe might have started off as something a little bit more altruistic, something that maybe for the good of humanity, and just warped and changed into the messed up way it is right now, right? Maybe it didn't start off like that. Maybe the Ancient Kingdom was trying to take over the world, and the 20 kings came together like, we need to stop them, and they made the ancient weapons to stop the Ancient Kingdom, and then they won, but then power went to their heads, and maybe there was a group like that became the celestial dragons, like the rulers, the kings, got it in their heads that they could rule the world, and they just went overboard with it, right? That's another possibility, right? So these ancient weapons, if they are actual, like, constructs, like if Pluton really is this giant warship, I mean, I guess it could be hidden away somewhere in the One Piece world, in a cave or underground or something. Pluton, Hades, king of the underworld, underground. Give me a second. I guess it's possible that could be the case, but the world government has crazy resources, and they've had centuries upon centuries upon centuries to find and locate these ancient weapons. If they were just hidden away in a cave somewhere in the Grand Line, I feel like they would have been discovered by now. Now, there are certain islands that the world government just can't get to, or it's very difficult to get to. Lodestar is probably one of them. Laugh Tale is certainly one of them. So that creates the idea that maybe these ancient weapons are all hidden on Laugh Tale, like the last bastion where even the world government cannot locate it without the road poneglyphs, right? So that's a possibility. Another way I want you to look at this is if Pluton really is a warship, if it's just been sitting around for 8 centuries, it might not be in the best shape anymore, right? Now, of course, you could always say, like, oh, well, it was built with atom wood, and that never rots, and that never decays. Or it was built with this special metal that is like, ultimate stainless steel, or, platinum, or titanium, or vibranium, or whatever. Vibranium? Vibranium. Whatever. It's made out of this super, super special metal. It never rots, it never decays, it never rusts, it never corrodes. And Pluton is sitting somewhere underground in an underground like wharf or something, and it's perfectly operational, right? Well, possibly. I mean, it could be. It's One Piece. But also, remember what Frankie said. When Frankie was, building the Thousand Sunny, he was using the best material possible. He was using atom wood to build the thing. But Frankie still said, it's just like, it doesn't matter how good the material a ship is. You still need to take proper care of it. You still need a proper shipwright to man the vessel and repair it. It doesn't matter. It can be made out of the best metal, the best wood in the entire world, best fabric for a sail. It needs to be maintained. If you don't know what you're doing, it's going to fall into disrepair, okay? Now, Pluton might be the sole exception to this, but I just want to think about that, okay? So, what I'm basically getting around to here, and the thing that I kind of thought of when I was doing the Centuries video, is what if, at the beginning, all 3 ancient weapons were physical, like, constructs? Pluton was a battleship. Uranus, let's say, was a giant UFO or an airplane or some kind of like, flying machine that can bombard the land below. And Poseidon wasn't even originally an actual mermaid. Poseidon was a device that allowed you to like control or manipulate or at least talk to the Sea Kings. Maybe they started off as actual constructs, okay? But they were made using some sort of void century magic, It was like maybe the combination between magic and technology together created these ancient weapons, and that's what made them so powerful, okay? Steampunk plus Harry Potter. Let's just go with that. Whatever, okay. And so the big epic war happened during the Void Century. Whichever side created them doesn't really matter in this one particular instance. During this great war, right before the world government was about to win, let's say these ancient weapons were destroyed, their physical, like, constructs were destroyed, but the essence of them, the magical core, the soul, the aura, whatever you want to call it, went into living avatars, so to speak. And so the avatar of Poseidon became the first mermaid princess. Poseidon, whose name was essentially Poseidon, that's more of a title. I feel like the title is Poseidon, and she probably had a different name back then, and of course, Shirahoshi is her actual given name right now, but, her title is Poseidon, Mermaid Princess, okay? And so, that title, that power, would be passed down throughout the generations. Sometimes it would skip a generation, it wouldn't be consistent, Every few hundred years, a mermaid princess would be born with the stored up power of Poseidon inside of her, and so the same thing with Pluton. Pluton was this destructive battleship. The battleship itself was destroyed, but the essence, the magic, or whatever you want to call it, went into another avatar. And if they awaken that power, then they can summon, like, I don't know, they can fire giant energy beams or something like that, okay? And then Uranus, also god of the sky, devastating power in that regard as well. So, that's an idea, and like, if you want a way for the world government to not be able to find these ancient weapons, that's a pretty good way of looking at it, right? Because if they were physical objects that were just in one location for centuries, the odds of them being discovered are pretty high. Even if they're really, really well hidden, the world government, you'd assume, would find them eventually if they just stayed in the same place. But if they were constantly being reincarnated into different avatars throughout the generations, and you have no idea where they are, like you might have a general idea, but you don't even know if they exist, especially if they skip generations. Like you could have had like the original mermaid princess, the original Poseidon 800 years ago that made the promise with Joy Boy. When she died, the next mermaid princess might have not have been born for 200 years. And then it's like, okay, then she lived, and then she died, and the world government didn't know about it, and so that would be a really crazy good way of hiding the ancient weapons, you know, regardless of who originally made them. Hell, it could have been a thing like, let's say the world government did make the ancient weapons, but then when they won the war and things started getting insane, maybe the people that built the weapons were like, okay, the 20 kings are going mad with power, we need to break these weapons and divide the power across the world because we need to hide them from the kings, right? You could have had the ancestor of Vivi and Cobra, the original king of the Nefeltari family that helped found the world government, could have been like, hey guys, those 19 other kings are going crazy with power. Did you see that Doflamingo guy? Freaking insane. You give me Pluton, I'll hide it at Alabasta. I'm not going to join them, okay? And then we'll give Poseidon to the Ryugu kingdom, the fishmen and the merfolk to watch over that. And then we'll give Uranos, the god of the sky, to the Skypians or the Brickens or whoever was living up there at the time. That could have been a situation where they like knew about them and they, you know, gave the weapon to them. I don't think it's, you know, coincidence that we have a weapon of the sea and, you know, fishmen and merfolk, and then a weapon of the sky, Skypians, Brickens, Shandorians, and then a weapon of, well, a weapon of land? Hold on a second. But that was the idea, you know, maybe that's like the whole thing with the avatars. Now, moving on to a mythology kind of standpoint here, okay? So this is actually very interesting when you look at it from the perspective of how these weapons are named. Now, I should preface this by saying Oda might have just named them that because they sounded cool, all right? But if you look at, like, the meaning behind them, it's a little weird, okay? So, first we have Pluton. All right, Pluton is named after Pluto, who is the Roman god of the underworld, the Roman equivalent of Hades, all right? So that's a Roman god we have with Pluton. Then we have Poseidon. Poseidon is the Greek god, the Greek Olympic god of the sea, of the ocean, all right? So we have a Roman deity and then a Greek deity, and then Uranus is actually, he is also a Greek god, but not an Olympian. He's a primordial god. He was, to basically break it down, the gods in the Greek pantheon started at primordials, and then the next generation were Titans, and the next generation were the Olympic gods, like Zeus and Hera and Apollo, probably the ones that most people know about, okay? So I'm not going to go way into it here, but the basic idea is it's a little bit scattershotted, okay? We have a Roman god, then we have a Greek Olympic god, and then we have a Greek primordial god as the triforce of these ancient weapons, all right? And I only bring this up, and like I said, it might have just been because maybe Oda thought about naming Pluton Hades, but he just thought, you know what, I don't want to name it Hades, that doesn't sound as cool. Pluton? Ooh, Pluton is a pretty cool name for a world-destroying super weapon, so I'm going to name it Pluton, right? Oda might have not have put too much thought into it from that perspective, but he might have as well, because this is Oda we're talking about here, okay? So it's a little all over the place. Something that would have made a lot more sense, and if you know a little bit about Greek mythology, you might be with me on this, is can you think of three deities that together might have made better names for the three ancient weapons that might have connected a little bit better? And you might arrive at the conclusion of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Okay, and the reason you might have arrived at that conclusion is because, well, they're all brothers for one. They were all born from Cronus, who was the Titan, he was Saturn, essentially. He was the ruler of the Titans, and then Zeus and his brothers started a war that killed the Titans, and he became the new father of gods. And the idea was Zeus took over the sky. He became the father of gods, the heavens and the earth. Poseidon got the ocean, and Hades ruled the underworld, all right? Also, Hades, fun fact, is often not considered one of the 12 Olympic gods, just how that worked, but at any rate, those three are brothers, and they all kind of rule a different aspect, okay? Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld, and then you have Zeus, who ostensibly usually is referred to as just like the god of the sky or the god of lightning or whatever, but another term he is called is the god of the heavens and the earth. Okay, he controls both, all right? And that's how it's all divvied up and everything like that. That would have made a lot more sense if the ancient weapons were named Poseidon, Zeus, and Hades, okay? Or even Poseidon, Zeus, and Pluton. That would still, like, make sense. Zeus is excluded here, and instead we have Uranos, a primordial deity, which is kind of, like, separate, okay? It's also possible Oda could have just searched, like, who was the Greek god of the sky? And you're gonna get Uranos, who's, like, Father Sky, born of Gaia, also Gaia's husband, because Greek mythology, that's how that rolls. And that's just what, oh, Uranos. Okay, I'll just call it that. I'm not gonna put more thought into it. Maybe, possibly, okay? And of course, we have Zeus as another character in One Piece, Zeus being the homie of Big Mom alongside Prometheus and Napoleon that represents like Zeus the Thundercloud, the Thunderhead. So he still has the power of Zeus, like he can rain lightning bolts down on everybody. So maybe that's another thing too. Maybe Oda was like, well, I could name the third ancient weapon Zeus to represent the god of the heavens and the earth, and you could still basically have the same idea, but no, I want to name, you know, this giant cloud Zeus instead. Nami's new companion and everything like that. So that's a possibility as well. I'm just saying it could have worked a little bit of a different way. And something else that's important to bring up with this theory that maybe, let's say, the ancient weapons represent, you know, each part of the world and there's an avatar that has the power in them. So Uranos, Father Sky, that makes sense. Probably involving the sky races in some way, right? Okay. Then we have, you know, Poseidon, underwater, ocean, mermaid princess, makes sense. We assume that Pluton represents the land, you know, so Pluton is a battleship that annihilates the land, okay? But if we're taking this literally, then it wouldn't be the land so much as it would be the underworld, because that's what Pluton or Pluto or Hades rules over, the underworld. And the underworld in Greek mythology, it's not exactly hell. It's not hell either. It's basically the afterlife. It's all of the afterlife. There's the living realm, and then there's the underworld that Hades rules over with Cerberus, his three-headed doggo. And when you die in Greek mythology, regardless of whether or not you were a good person or a bad person, you have to get on Charon's boat to cross Styx into the underworld, into Hades' domain, and then you are judged, and if you were a good person, your time in the underworld is pretty chill. If you were a bad person, your time in the underworld is pretty shitty, and there's different, you know, sections of the underworld and all that. And in fact, the deepest level of the underworld is actually Tartarus, which is the ancient prison that houses the Titans that were defeated by the Olympians. Tartarus also being one of the original primordial gods that was created out of chaos, alongside Gaia and Nyx, who is night, right? Okay, so that's the underworld, right? Now, in the One Piece world, we've yet to really explore any concept of an underworld or an underdark or some kind of other realm, subterranean realm underneath the planet. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I give you, for that reason, King! Not that king. There we go. This king, right? King, as Big Mom stated, is one of the few races, one of the three races that do not exist in Totland. We know giants are another one. We do not know what King's race is, and we do not know what the other one that she was referring to, okay? Skypian is probably another one, but King looks a little different from the Skypians that we know. He has black wings, and he also covers his entire body, head to toe, with that BDSM gimp suit made out of, like, leather and latex or whatever, so we don't know what he actually looks like, all right? And he can control fire to boot. He's King the Wildfire. He just controls fire, all right? So we don't know what he looks like, and he has black wings, and he controls fire. A lot of people, me included, go with the idea, what if he's some kind of demon or devil race, right? He's like maybe a fallen angel race or some kind of demon race that still has wings, but, you know, comes from like a subterranean realm or the underworld or whatever, and they can control fire because they're like demons or whatever. I also like to throw out the idea that maybe they lived in some kind of volcanic, like, subterranean city, like in RuneScape, you know, where, like, you fight Teztok Jad and everything like that, like the fight pits. That would be really cool, like an obsidian city with, like, magma rivers running through it and whatever. That would be really sweet. You could see King living in that sort of environment, right? So, like I said, a lot of that is headcanon. We do not know. But I was just thinking, like, a lot of people assume Pluton has to deal with the land, and that must be where it's hidden, but it's like, hey, if Poseidon is the god of the ocean, and Poseidon in One Piece is literally at the bottom of the ocean, and Uranos is the sky deity, and it's probably located on the moon, to be honest with you, you know, on the moon or at least in the sky, and those are taken literally, why not take the name Pluton or Pluto literally and just say, no, it's not on the land of One Piece, it's in the underworld of One Piece. It's under the ground. There's a subterranean city down there somewhere. How do you gain access to it? I have no idea. That might be another reason why King thinks that he's like the last one of his kind, or Big Mom called him like the last one, right? Maybe there are like an entire other species down there that are like King's people. However, he got cast out or something, or he got lost, and, you know, I don't know, a volcano erupted and King popped out of it, or he's Rodan essentially. So that makes sense, because Rodan out of the volcano, that's the movie, right? So what if King got, you know, cast out of his kingdom, and so he joined up with Kaido or whatever, and they just assume that he's the last one of his kind? But there could be others down there as well that there's just no way to get back. King doesn't know how to get back to his kingdom or whatever, right? There's a lot of kings in that sentence, but could be something like that too, right? So yeah, it's just one of those things where we're starting to speed up the story. Wano's going to be ending soon, and it's just starting to look into, like, we're probably going to find out about the ancient weapons, you know, within the next few years. I'm trying to piece together some stuff. Here's another thing too I wanted to bring up. Robin knows about the names of all of them, all right? How did she find out the name of Uranos? Because the only way that you would find out the names of these ancient weapons is on poneglyphs, because that's the only place they exist anymore, right? And so she found out about the name of Poseidon at Skypiea, and she found out the name of Pluton at Alabasta. She had to find another poneglyph at some point during her travels, and, you know, there was a poneglyph at Ohara that she would have read. Maybe that's the one that said Uranos. When she was traveling on the run from the government, she also discovered probably multiple poneglyphs on her journey, because she was running from the government for over 20 years, right? So at some point there, she probably might have, you know, stumbled across at least one or two other poneglyphs. There was also a poneglyph we saw that Odin looked at during his flashback, not the road poneglyph, just a regular old poneglyph on some island. This might have been the same poneglyph that Robin saw here. It could be the same one, right? So yeah, it's just interesting. I want to know about, like, really where all these point to, or if there's significance on, like, okay, so in the Sky Islands, there's a poneglyph that points to Poseidon. But remember, that poneglyph wasn't originally in the sky. That was originally in the Golden City of Shandora on the land that pointed to Poseidon underground, not underground, underwater. And then Pluton, you know what? It's still a little ambiguous to me whether or not Pluton is actually hidden in Alabasta itself, or the poneglyph just spoke about where to find it. You could look at it two ways. You could say that, because it did say, the poneglyph that Robin read at in the tomb of the kings in Alabasta, it really did say something about Pluton. She just lied to Crocodile, right? So it could have said, like, go to this island and you will find Pluton, or it could be like, you know, take 2 steps to the left, there's a secret stairwell, and that'll lead you down to Pluton, and here's how to activate it. It's right underneath your feet, under the tomb. That might have been the case too. That's a little bit ambiguous, but yeah, just some stuff to think about involving the ancient weapons. Are they actual constructs? Are they avatars? Were they constructs at one point? And this whole thing with the underworld, I'm kind of going full speed into this, because I really like this idea that there's like another realm of the One Piece world we've yet to explore yet. And the reason it's never been mentioned is because, as far as the people of the One Piece world go, just like the Sky Islands, it's purely mythical. It's like, Sky Islands, people living on clouds? That's stupid. Next thing you'll say is there's some kind of subterranean city 30 miles under my feet. Ha ha. I think it makes sense. So then we'll have an underworld, then we'll have the ocean, which there's, like, you know, different islands where fishmen and merfolk live on the bottom of the sea, and then the land, you know, sea level, where we have a bunch of crazy stuff there, and then we have the sky, and then we have the moon. Also, talking about Uranos a little bit here, because I didn't really talk about that too much, because we don't really know a lot about Uranos. I like, a lot of people were like throwing out Momo, like Momo and Zunisha might be the god of the sky in that regard. Considering, once again, taking it literally, I feel like it should be a Skypian or somebody that came from the sky. So the two possibilities are Eneru. Eneru might, you know, fulfill the destiny and become the next, you know, Uranos by activating the ancient weapon or creating it on the moon and then going back down to the earth, and then boom, there you go. There's Uranos for you right there, and freaking Eneru is the living deity of that, and that could actually spin it in a way where he just had a god complex at first, but no, Eneru is now a legitimate deity by having this power. That could be a concern. The other person that is talked about is Isa. the little girl that had the observation hockey that Luffy ran into that was a Shandorian, also might fulfill that prophecy as well. And yes, the Shandorians that lived at, Shandora were blasted into the sky by the knock-up stream, but they all came from the moon originally. The Shandorians, the Skypians, and the Brickens all came from the moon, and the Brickens and the Skypians settled in the sky. The Shandorians made it to the surface where they created Shandora. Then it got blasted into the sky by the knock-up stream, because it's a little confusing, because they all have wings. So it's just like, okay, but why did the Shandorians have wings if they lived on the surface? It's like, well, because they all came from the moon, and they just got blasted back up. So it's a little confusing, but that's basically what happened. So anyway, yeah, that's the video. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and now you know what it's time for. That's right, Ant Facts. Oh yeah. So today we're going to be talking about Nothomyrmecia. And this is actually a critically endangered species of ant that currently only resides in southern Australia and only a few very specific kind of places, okay? This is a very old ant. It's referred to as the dinosaur ant or the dawn ant. This is what it looks like. Just in appearance alone, looks very, very different from other ant species. The face is very narrow. The mandibles are very interesting. They make very small colonies. We talked about the leafcutter ants that work together with the fungus that had like 8 million in their colony at like maximum. Well, when it comes to these dinosaur ants or these dawn ants, they only live, they only have a colony of maybe only a few hundred, if that. Sometimes more than one queen will create the colony, but then after the colony is established, the queen will leave and go to some other place and start another colony. And so, yeah, critically endangered, meaning that they're one step shy of being extinct in the wild. It goes critically endangered, then extinct in the wild, and then, the only surviving members are in captivity, and then just purely extinct, just gone forever. There's no surviving, members that we know of, okay? And so because of that, there's a lot of conservation efforts to save this ant in southern Australia. There might be more, located in that area. We just haven't discovered it yet. But yeah, that's basically the deal with the dinosaur ant. Very interesting, critically endangered, and I hope they can make it through. So yeah, they even make like a little sculpture here of the ant down in southern Australia. So that's cool. If you live in Australia, let me know if you've ever heard of this species or if you've ever actually seen them. That would be really cool. But anyway, yeah, that's this episode of Ant Facts. Thanks for watching, and thanks for seeing the video, everybody. It's always fun to talk about mythology on the channel. I hope I didn't go too overboard with that, but yeah, just think about it. Mythology, along with geography and ant facts, makes up really the triforce of our world. Later, everybody.